Warning. This show features dark subjects which may be triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Chaos Jar. I'm the loud and obnoxious one, J. West Secord. Hey! Next to me is our host and big bag of facts, Bad Ben.
Hey!
And as always, we're joined by David. Oh, David.
It's my third time. It's very exciting.
Yes. Seeing as it's your third time, I think that qualifies as a pattern.
Yes.
So you are either A, serial killer, or B, the third official co-host.
Well, we'll see how it escalates.
I don't like how that came out.
We'll see how this goes.
I shouldn't have put options out there.
It's up in the air now.
Like the knife. As always, you can follow us at Instagram and Twitter at BA Chaos Jar. You can also follow us. You can also follow me on Twitter at I'm Glad You Asked _ Ask me a question, any question. I'll answer and reply with some weird answer reply. It might be legitimate. It might be illogical. It might be me just saying the word fart. But the thing is, I just want you to ask me a question. You just one. We got one. I got one. And that was it.
What was the question?
I can't remember.
Oh.
I'd have to look on Twitter again. But I believe it was... Wait. Okay, give me a second. No, I got this. Okay, we're good. I got this. Okay, that question...
Pre-prep your material, Wes. You and that scoliosis.
Fun fact about myself or something like that. Yeah. Shut up. Anyway, you can also follow us at Facebook at Chaos Jar Podcast, which is also the name of our YouTube channel, where if you ain't good with the podcast apps and stuff, you can send people there and they'll be able to watch or listen to our stuff there. This New York accent devolved into Christopher Walken, or evolved, depending on your point of view. And if you want to throw us a couple bucks, go to patreon.com/chaosjar, and you throw us a little money, we'll shout out, give you some credits, executive producer and all that jazz, plus, you get early access to our bonus content, The Overflow. Whoa. All that in the show notes and more. There's never more. Like Edgar Allan Poe. So what's going on in the jar today, Ben?
So we're going to talk about The Watcher.
I feel like I've heard of this before.
I feel like this is deja vu.
No, I don't know a Dej.
David.
Oh, hi, David. How's it going? This is your third time.
His last name is
my third time.
Abu. Are we able to close that door? Start freezing here.
Are you getting cold?
A little bit.
Are you getting cold?
I don't know why.
Are we doing a bit now to show that you're cold because I opened the sliding glass door?
Well, we've been going at it for about an hour now, so...
I mean, about an hour. So does that mean you're cold? Are your nipples hard?
Yeah, but I'm not satisfied.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, that's because your penis has shrunk, like mine, due to the cold.
Oh, Edmund Kemper. All right. So, we're going to go to one night in June of 2014.
Okay.
And Derek Brodus is finishing up an evening of painting at his new house in Westfield, New Jersey, when he goes outside to check the mail. He actually just bought this house at 657 Boulevard 3 days earlier. And he had begun renovations with a company, and to save money, he was doing the painting on his own. So they want to do a bunch of renovations and make it into basically their dream home because his wife was actually from the area and always liked the area, always wanted to move back to this area in Westfield, New Jersey. And being on the boulevard was actually like the strip. It's like where you want to live, where you want to raise your family. Houses are a huge market there.
Is suburbia?
Basically.
Yeah.
So he goes to check to see, and he finds a few bills and a white card-shaped envelope. And it's addressed in thick, clunky handwriting, and it says, "To the new owner." And inside is a typed note, and it begins, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." This is so sweet.
Wow, that's just, you know what, wait for it.
So,
I feel like there's more.
So there is more to this note, but Brodus is like, Derek is actually really like, he's like, great. He's like, we have this dream home where my wife grew up. She was raised actually a few houses down the block from here. Like, and he is doing great. He actually grew up in Maine originally, but then he moved. He actually
Wait, Maine?
Yeah, in Maine.
So this guy is in a Stephen King book right
Basically.
now. Yeah. Okay, so I've already figured that out. There's an extra dimensional creature of some sort that exists from a fog and or ethereal plane that will murder lots of people.
Holy crud, I don't even have to keep going. All wrapped up.
Wes figured it out.
And then he shoots his son and has no more bullets for himself.
I think we're talking about different things.
Okay.
So,
give me some popcorn. Can I have some popcorn?
So he grew up in Maine, he started working for an insurance company, and he actually moved up the ladder at this insurance company in Manhattan. And he became the senior vice president, and he has this massive salary that was large enough to buy this $1.3 million house.
I thought you were going to say penis.
$1.3 million penis.
$1.3 million penis.
No, massive.
He had this massive penis that allowed him to buy a $1.3 million house. And his wife was like, "I really want this house, do whatever you have to." And he's like, "Just 1 second." And he goes and he's like, "Hey, realty lady."
And all you hear is the unzipping noise.
Unzips his thing. Oh my god!
Zip.
We got the house.
You could hold up a bank with that.
All right. Yeah. So
listen to my bazooka.
What he's referencing is when my friend Jesse and I were at a sex shop, and he looked at this giant novelty dildo and was like, "You could rob a bank with that thing." And I could proceeded to be like, "If you robbed my bank with that, I would just hand you the money." If you come in and you just have this gigantic dildo, I'm going to be afraid to say no.
I'm just going to cut my losses and pass you the cash.
All I want is that you leave the dildo with me.
Now I'm buying it off of you.
Yeah. For the bank's money.
Yeah.
It's a company purchase.
It is my Christmas gift.
It's the new hat rack.
It's my Christmas bonus.
So, the Broduses have...
Hat rack!
I thought you said Christmas boner, and I was like, yeah,
I like hat rack, because where do you put a hat? On your head.
All right, so the Broduses bought the house just after Derek was celebrating his 40th birthday, so he's 40. And their 3 kids were debating on which of the house's fireplaces Santa Claus would use. So there's multiple fireplaces in this house. It's a gigantic dream home. Everything's going great, and then he gets this really nice letter. So he keeps reading. And the letter says, "How did you end up here? Did 657 call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 20s, my father watched in the 60s, and now it is my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out."
Jesus.
So it went from, like, you know, the nice neighbor being like, "Welcome to the neighborhood," to "I will find you."
I'm watching you.
I mean,
Figuring
what?
you out.
Man, I like what a family business.
Yeah.
Right. Son, I've been watching this house for 20 years.
Waiting for its second coming.
I'm waiting for a second coming. But if I don't make it to that, you have to take my place. And then next generation, son, my father told
You're in
me,
a Jersey accent.
yeah, my father, that everybody's got a different accent now. My father, he has been watching this house his entire life, waiting for its second coming. And now I'm watching it. But if I don't make it, you're going to have to watch it. Now, son, oh, wait. I'm the current one, so I don't know what to do. I also don't know why I chose this accent. Maybe because it throws off the intimacy of the note I sent. Welcome to the neighborhood. Welcome to the neighborhood.
I will find out.
Do you know its history?
Do you know what's in its walls?
Well, you'll find out soon.
If I had enough money that I could buy a $1.3 million house, and someone told me something was in the walls, I think I'd spend the next few days, like, ripping down walls.
I mean, yeah. Like,
I'd just be dying of curiosity. Like, what is in the wall?
we're renovating, bitch!
So, take this one out.
Let's get back to the letter here. The letter then identifies the
I
Brodus'
knew it. Faulty pipes.
It identifies the Brodus' Honda minivan, as well as the workers renovating the home. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors, so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 unhappy. So earlier in the week, Derek and Maria had begun visiting the house because they purchased it, and they chatted with the new neighbors while their children, who are 5, 8, and 10 at this time, ran around the backyard with several other kids from the neighborhood. And apparently, this letter writer noticed, you have children. I've seen them. So far, I think that there are 3 that I have counted.
I've seen them, like you're trying to hide them.
And then asked if there were more on the way. Do you need to fill the house with young blood? The young blood I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed that was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me. The envelope had no return address. Who am I? The person wrote. There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 each day. Maybe I'm in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I'm in one. Look at any of the many windows 657 Boulevard, all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one.
And look at the sky. Isn't it beautiful?
So then it ends with, welcome my friends, welcome. Let the party begin. And signs off with a cursive font of The Watcher. So at this time, it is 10 p.m., and Derek is reading this letter all alone at the front of his new house. So he races around the house and turns off any lights so that nobody can see inside. Then he calls the police. An officer came to the house, read the letter, and goes, what the fuck is this? Which I feel is one of the most Jersey things ever. What the fuck?
What the fuck is this?
So he asked Derek if he had any enemies and recommended moving a piece of construction equipment from the back porch in case the Watcher tried to toss it through a window. So Derek goes back to his wife and kids, and they're living in another home in Westfield while they're renovating this home. Derek and Maria wrote an email to John and Andrea Wood, who were the previous owners of 657 Boulevard, and asked them if they have any idea who the Watcher might be or if they had ever received any letters. Because in the letter, the Watcher had written, I asked the Woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened. Andrea Wood replied the next morning through email saying that a few days before moving out, the Woodses had received a letter from the Watcher, and that the note was odd and had similar mentions of the Watcher's family observing the house over time, but Andrea said that her and her husband had never received any letters before that in their 23 years in that house. So they threw the letter away thinking it was like a prank or something. That day, the Woodses went with Maria to the police station, where Detective Leonard Lugo told her not to tell anyone else about the letters, including her new neighbors, most of whom she had never met. So, because they're all suspects now. So, basically, clam up, don't say anything, because if you mention the letters, then we can't figure out, like, we're just basically going to do an investigation to see if we can find anybody who talks about these letters or talks about anything in the letters. The Broaddus's spent the next few weeks basically on high alert. Derek canceled a work trip. Maria took the kids to their new house. She would yell their names if they wandered into the corner of the yard. Derek gave a tour of the renovations to a couple on the block, and he froze when the wife said, "It'll be nice to have some young blood in the neighborhood." The Broaddus's general contractor arrived one morning to find a heavy sign he hammered in the front yard had been ripped out overnight. So 2 weeks after the letter arrived, Maria stopped by to check on some paint samples and check the mail. She recognized the thick black lettering on the card-shaped envelope, called the police. Inside was another note, and it says, "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard. The workers have been busy, and I have been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster is a nice touch. Have you found what's in the walls yet? In time they will." This time the Watcher basically addresses them as Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus, but misspells their name. The Watcher...
Yeah, it's Broaddus.
Yeah. So, the Watcher had been close enough to hear one of the contractors talking to them as Mr. Broaddus, but the Watcher boasted of having learned a lot about the family in the weeks that had just gone by. Apparently, even the children, and the letter even identifies all three kids by birth order and by nicknames.
Oh.
So I am pleased to know your names now. The name of the young blood you have brought me. You certainly say their names often. And then he mentions that one of the children must be an artist because of an easel set up inside of an enclosed porch. Is she the artist in the family? 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedroom facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. All the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move throughout the house. Who am I? I am the Watcher, and I have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move on and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you are too, Broaddus family. Welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families in 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy move-in day. You will know I will be watching. So they stopped bringing the kids to the house. And they're no longer sure whether or not they even want to move into this house. But they have put a lot of money into this house. Several weeks later, a third letter arrives and says, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." So,
so we got trailed off a little bit because my cat crawled across us, and David had a face of, "Oh,
I love cats." I'm just curious, like, what is in those friggin' walls?
that's what I keep wondering. So
What's in the basement?
I also find it interesting that he was like, that Watcher was like, if they go in there, you'll never hear them scream. Like, so you must have a way into the basement? Like, so...
Unless he's a Spider-Man!
So, do either of you know what Mayberry is from the Andy Griffith Show?
No.
So it's the town they live in, and it's supposed to be like an idyllic town. There's almost no crime. There's that one guy who sits in the jail cell. I don't forget his name. I barely watched it, but like he's just like the town drunk. So Westfield residents actually compared their town to this. It's a place where you really greet your neighbors, and you will send a welcoming note. It's 45 minutes from New York, and it's too slow for singles. It's basically made for like families. The 30,000 residents actually are largely well-to-do families. They work probably in New York, or they commute between some of the major cities around, and they have good incomes. They have good families. Everything is very well done. Bloomberg actually ranked Westfield in 2018 as the 99th richest city in America, and it's the 18th wealthiest city in New Jersey. So in 2014, when the Watcher struck, the website Neighborhood Scout actually listed it as the 30th safest town in America, like in the USA. So the most pressing local issue in 2014 at that time was that there had been a temporary closure of Trader Joe's after a roof collapsed, and then there was a rampant scourge of unconstitutional policing. And they meant aggressive parking enforcements. So a lot of people were getting tickets. Westfield's also 86% white. So it's not like it's majority white, but there are other ethnicities in this. So it's like a nice little town. People just get along with each other. And if the worst thing you have is that the roof collapsed due to some sort of damage to the roof at Trader Joe's, and people are upset mainly because they feel that police are being unfair with parking tickets. It's not like this kind of stuff happens all the time. So, one thing though is that locals recognize, like one activity all locals recognize as treacherous is trying to buy a new house. So they don't want new real estate in there. They want you to buy what's there and just build on that, renovate that, like keep the historicness of it.
They want the bones to stay.
Yeah. So they've seen bidding wars where people lost $300,000 on houses. So the Brodus' house is on one of the best desirable neighborhoods in town. And as the Watcher had noted, the Boulevard is the street to live on. You made it if you lived on the Boulevard. So you've made it to this house, and I recognize that you've made it to this house. I've been watching this house. You guys obviously have some good money.
Right.
So 657 Boulevard was built in 1905, and it was actually one of the best houses on the block. The Woodses had put it on the market, and they had received numerous offers above their asking price. And then that led the Broduses to initially suspect that the Watcher might be someone who was upset over losing this house. But the Woodses said that one interested buyer had backed out after a bad medical diagnosis, so they probably got cancer or something like that, and were like, we can't afford this, we're going to be... And while another had already found a different home. So Andrea Woods proposed in an email to the Broduses that would the mention of the contractor truck and your children suggest that it is someone in the neighborhood, so somebody lives close by. So letters indicate proximity. They were processed in Kearney, the U.S. Postal Service's distribution center in northern New Jersey. The first is postmarked on June 4th, before the sale was public. The Woods had never put up a for sale sign, so nobody even really knew this was for sale. And only a day after the contractors had arrived. So this was basically, contractors showed up to start working on the house. Nobody really known that anybody had moved out or was moving in, and they've already posted this. Like, they sent this in the mail. And these letters are arriving by mail. They're not being dropped off. Like,
oh,
weird.
Actually, I thought they were being dropped off.
Nope,
technically they're being dropped off, but like not by the person in question.
Yeah. So the renovations were mostly interior, so the contractor showing up could have just been the Woodses fixing something in their house. Like, it wasn't like they were tearing apart the outside or anything. People who lived nearby say that they didn't even notice an unusual commotion, even from the jackhammering in the basement. So Derek and Maria walked to Detective Lugo, around the house and showed him the easel at the porch was hidden from the street by vegetation, so it would make it very difficult for anyone to see from behind the house or from right next door. A few days after the first letter, Maria and Derek went to a barbecue on the street, welcoming them to the block. And the Broadduses hadn't told anyone about the Watcher, as the police had instructed, and found themselves scanning the party for clues while keeping a tab on the kids.
They're just anxiously and paranoidly going, "Oh yeah, no, we just moved in. Yeah, you know, do you mail often? Letters?
How long have you been watching? I mean, living close to our house."
Yeah. Are you familiar with the neighborhood? Is it? It's a good place, right?
So do you have a family business? Perhaps one that spans from the 20s?
Do you keep up any family traditions, y'all?
You have a southern accent.
No, I do not.
So,
like they just know from the writing it's a southern accent.
So, Derek was actually at this barbecue. Derek was chatting with a man named John Schmidt, and yes, it's Schmidt.
Schmidt,
who lived 2 doors down. Schmidt told him about the Langfords, who lived between them. Peggy Langford was in her 90s, and several of her adult children, all in their 60s, lived with her. The family was a bit odd, but harmless, and Schmidt described one of the younger Langfords, Michael, who didn't work, had a beard like Ernest Hemingway, and was described as, quote, kind of a Boo Radley character, end quote, if you know who Boo Radley is.
No.
Boo Radley is from To Kill a Mockingbird.
So kind of a shut-in, nobody sees him, kind of, there's some mysticism around him.
I don't give a shit. Boo Radley. Hello, I'm Boo Radley. Like, it's like a Munsters character. I'm a ghost named Boo Radley.
So, because of this description, Derek's like, that's the guy. Like, he's gotta be. The Langford house was right next to the easel on the porch. The family had lived there since the 60s, when the Watcher's father, the letter said, had begun observing 657 Boulevard. Richard Langford, the father of this family, had died 12 years earlier, and the current Watcher claimed to have been on the job for the better part of 2 decades.
Plus, he really didn't like this Boo Radley character.
So, the Broadduses told Lugo about that family, and Lugo said that he already knew, and a week after the first letter arrived, he brought Michael Langford into police headquarters for an interview. Michael denied knowing anything about the letters, but the Broadduses say that Lugo told them that, quote, the narrative, end quote, of what he said matched things mentioned in the letter. This isn't CSI Westfield, Lugo later told the Broadduses. When the wife is dead, it's the husband. But there wasn't any hard evidence, and after a few weeks, the police chief told the Broadduses that, short of any admission, there wasn't anything the department could do. This is someone who threatened my kids, and the police are saying, probably nothing's going to happen.
Probably.
Probably isn't good enough for me, says Derek. After the second letter, Derek told the cops that if they didn't take care of the situation, they would have a different kind of case on their hands. Quote, this person attacked my family and where I'm from. If you do that, you get your ass beat. End quote. He's from Maine. We send a clown after you.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, You just live in a horror movie.
Yeah.
Or a prison. Or horror prison.
Or a grocery store.
Or Maine.
So, frustrated, the Broduses began their own investigation, and Derek basically became obsessed with this. He set up webcams that would constantly record 657 Boulevard, and would spend nights crouched in the dark watching to see if anybody was watching the house at close range. So he's in the house with webcams on, watching himself be fucking paranoid, watching the fucking streets.
That's just me. Good.
All I keep thinking about is the Denver Spider-Man and some guy living in the attic.
Well, that's what I said earlier.
Yeah.
It's a Spider-Man. My God! These are the comedic jokes I put out here and you just ignore!
What was that?
Sorry, Wes, we couldn't hear you.
And I'm sorry to you, David. This is what you got yourself into.
I can understand it. I can roll with it. It's okay.
So,
Can you?
For now. You gave me an option.
All right.
I'm still thinking.
Move the sharp objects.
while this is happening, so while he's doing this, he is doing an interview at a coffee shop, and he says, Maria thought I was crazy. No shit. He had actually covered a table with documents relating to the case, copies of the letters, which he and his wife only shared with a few friends and family members. I wouldn't be sharing that with anybody. I would actually be like, maybe it is a fucking friend of mine and they're obsessed with me. Like, he showed a map displaying each of 657's neighbors and when they had moved in. The Langfords were the only ones that had been there since the 60s, which overlays markings possible sightlines for the easel, a circle of approximate range of earshot to estimate who might have heard Maria yelling the kids' names. Only a few homes fit into that criteria.
All right, bring out the conspiracy thread and the thumbtacks.
Yeah, basically. So the Broduses also turned to several experts. They got a private investigator who staked out the neighborhood, ran background checks, and he didn't find anything noteworthy, including from the Langfords. Derek reached out to a former FBI agent who served as an inspiration for Clarice Starling in The Silence of the Lambs. They were on a high school board of trustees together. So he's friends with a former FBI agent. And they also hired Robert Lenahan, who is another former FBI agent, to conduct a threat assessment. He has people who work for the FBI in on this.
But did he open the walls?
Not yet.
Yeah, you know, how does he know all these authoritative people?
I feel like his method is just bad. Like, if he's not, like, ripping the walls open, is he really having a paranoid...
You know what would be amazing? If he ripped open a wall and they found another letter that looks exactly like that, and then he's like, I got you to rip open your wall.
Yeah. Got you! And then it's just a picture of a crocodile flipping him off.
So
that would be one for the books.
So Lenahan recognized several old-fashioned ticks in the letters that pointed to an older typewriter. The envelope was addressed to M/M Bradis. The salutations included the day's weather, warm and humid, sunny and cool for a summer day. And the sentences had double spaces between them. The letter had a certain literary pinock, which suggested a voracious reader.
Vocarious.
Yeah.
You know, I like to live vicariously.
Me too.
Through other people's speech.
Exactly.
So, there's also a surprising lack of profanity given the level of anger. Lenahan thought this meant a less macho writer. He wondered if the Watcher had seen the movie The Watcher starring Keanu Reeves as a serial killer who stalks a detective trying to catch him. Which is actually a pretty good movie. So,
Is it?
it is.
I've never seen it. Didn't even know it existed.
Oh, there you go.
Are you going to show it to me? We're going to watch this shit?
We're not-
Right now? Let's watch this shit. This is going to be a 2-hour episode.
Blind reaction. So, Lenihan didn't think the Watcher was likely to act on any of the threats, but the letters were sure enough had enough typos and errors to imply a certain erraticism. The first letter was dated Tuesday, June 4th, but that day was a Wednesday.
Okay.
There also was a seething anger directed at the wealthy in particular, and that comes with that greed thing. He seems to just be mad about anybody who could afford this house.
Well, can we pull back? What's so special about Wednesday?
So there's errors and stuff, so he's not double checking any of his facts either when he's writing them. He's just writing them as he thinks.
Okay.
Tuesday, June 4th, but June 4th was a Wednesday.
Okay. Somehow I missed that, and it was just like, but June 4th was a Wednesday, and then you just kept going, and I was like, what?
So, and like I said, the seething anger towards the wealthy, he seemed upset by any new money moving into town. Quote, "Are you one of those Hoboken transplants who are ruining Westfield?" So, like, they actually were doing relatively modest renovations inside, but he seemed angry about this. The house is crying from all the pain it's going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what it used to be in the time when I roamed the halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard when I ran from room to room, imagining the life with the rich occupants there. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father. But he kept watching until the day he died, and now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again. So he's got a real obsession with this, and he's been in the house, for certain. So Lenihan recommended looking into the former housekeepers and their descendants. Perhaps the Watcher was jealous of the Broduses had bought the home, and the writer couldn't afford it. Which, again, this kind of makes sense. He wants that house, and he can't afford it but he hates it because they can afford it.
I love that you screwed up and called them the Braduses.
I know. Because I keep seeing Bradus, and I'm like, no.
Bro, in all fairness, Brodus sounds like the name of a family in a sitcom of people who are all jocks.
Yes.
Like, almost stereotypically. Oh, we're the Broduses? Yeah, like, we get it. We do sports and shit.
And I'm reading it based off of how I've ever heard it before, and based off it's spelled. It's spelled Broaddus. So Broduses. But it could be Bradus.
Or it could be Brodeses.
It could be Broadus. It could be Broadus.
Or Broduses. Because it's Greek.
Are you trying to make it sound like a chocolate or a perfume?
Like Hercules or...
So,
Eudeces.
So their focus remains on the Langfords. I love that they're so convinced it's this family, and I get it. I get that, like, they've been there the longest, but if the police have cleared them, and there's not much that you can really, like, leave these fucking people alone. So, in cooperation with the Westfield police, the Broduses sent a letter to the Langfords announcing plans to tear the house down, hoping to prompt a response. And nothing came of it. So they even went and put out a notice basically telling this family that they think is the one that we're going to tear this house down with police cooperation in this whole thing, and just didn't incite the Watcher to be like, why the fuck are you tearing the house down? And they only told this family. So it makes me be like, this might not be you guys. Like,
yeah.
Detective Lugo brought Michael Langford in for a second interview and got nowhere. His sister Abby accused the police of harassing their family. Eventually, the Broduses hired Lee Levitt, a lawyer, who met with several members of the Langford family, as well as their attorney, to show them the letters, along with photos explaining how their house was one of the few vantage points from which the easel could be seen. The meeting grew tense, Levitt told me, and the Langfords insisted that Michael was innocent. One night, So this is part of the interview, but one night Derek had a dream in which he was confronted with Peggy, who is the mom of his family and is in her 90s, and demanded she build an 8-foot fence between the properties. Maria was having other kinds of dreams. She woke up with vivid nightmares about a man who lived nearby. He was wearing these boots and carrying a pitchfork and calling to the kids, and I couldn't get to them in time. She thought almost anyone could be the Watcher. She's basically, and like, I get it. Like, you're being harassed by this person who's sending you these letters. You don't know who they are. They know an awful lot about you, so they've been around your house. And meanwhile, like, you're new to the town, even though you grew up here originally. You're new coming back into the town. You don't know any of these people, so anybody could be it. She would actually, like, have a hard time just being at the local Trader Joe's.
You know, I just had a thought.
What's that?
A very good thought. It's a thought indeed. Detective. What if this Watcher character, as you said, is someone who didn't get the house? All right.
Yeah.
And they're creating this early paranoia on purpose so that they alienate the rest of the people in the neighborhood to the point that they have to leave anyway.
Yeah, and also if you're that paranoid about moving in that you're not bringing your kids there, well then it's going to keep working, so let's keep harassing, because then eventually you're just going to give it up. Like,
yeah.
Property. And that's what the police's theory is that it's got to be somebody who wants to buy this house. There are reasons to consider other suspects. For one thing, the police spoke to Michael before the second letter was sent, which would make sending 2 more letters especially reckless. But Michael's also, like, they described him as a Boo Radley kind of character, so I don't think he has that kind of thought pattern, possibly, but I don't know. I don't know Michael. The Broduses say that Lugo told them that they wouldn't receive any more letters after he spoke to Michael. Then there was the rest of the neighborhood to consider. Private investigators found 2 child sex offenders within blocks. Bill Woodward, the Broduses' house painter, also noticed something strange. The couple behind 657 Boulevard kept a pair of lawn chairs strangely close to the Broduses' property. Woodward said, "One day I was looking out the window and I saw this older guy sitting in one of the chairs. He wasn't facing the house. He was facing he wasn't facing his house. He was facing the Broduses' house. So he's fucking watching neighbors from his, which is odd, but also not odd. Like,
yeah, why would you aim your chairs at your house?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, you got your own yard. You're behind somebody else's house. Maybe you're a block over. Maybe you're on another street. They have the block, right? Like, they're on the street to be on.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good street still, but it's not the street, right? So I would be interested in the people on this street. And if my, like, yard let me look into someone else's yard, I would have popcorn out there. I'd be sitting out there just watching, reading the newspaper, just,
you know,
look at what they're doing now.
The Real Housewives of New Jersey.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, so, I hear someone shout in a parking lot, and I'm on my porch, like, ready to go. Like, oh, look at this, people.
So, you have a sad existence.
I really do.
So, by the end of 2014, the investigation had stalled entirely. The Watcher left no digital trail, no fingerprints, no way to place someone at the scene of the crime. That could have been, like, because he's mailing these letters. So it's not like he's even, like, showing up. So I have a feeling he's probably typing this up, wearing gloves, putting it all together. He's not licking those envelopes shut. He's probably, like, it's just weird.
What year is this again?
2014.
Okay.
So it's actually very recent. Like, it's not a... I say very recent, it's almost 10 years ago, but... Like, so the letter could be read closely for possible clues, and basically could also be just dismissed as random, ramblings. Like, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack, said Scott Cross, who helped investigate this whole case. In December, the Westfield police told the Broduses they've run out of options. Nothing we can do. Like, there's literally nothing they can do. They can't just go and arrest somebody for nothing. So, like, yeah, we fucking think it's that guy. Well, you can't just go in there and arrest him and hold him for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, so Derek showed the letters to his priest, and he came and blessed the house.
Excuse me, he got a priest to bless his house?
Yeah, just
when the FBI doesn't work.
yeah.
It's clearly demons. Yeah.
Have you watched horror movies?
Oh my
That's
God.
pretty much it.
What's his name from the Doris Withers case?
I thought you were going to say Dora the Explorer.
Hal Roach.
Hal Roach is in the walls?
Yeah, he's in the walls.
Oh, God.
Did Ben show you the picture I made?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, the renovations to 657 Boulevard included a new alarm system, and they were finished. They were finished within a few months. So, like, they did this, and they kept renovating, and they kept going, and they put in a new alarm system because I would fucking too. He also has webcams recording everything happening in the house, especially him sitting in the dark watching the streets. But they just couldn't move into the house, because they let their kids play outside, have friends over. Where they get a new letter every week detailing everything that happens to them. Like, Derek priced out training German shepherds and posted a job on a website for military veterans. All you have to do is work out in the backyard every day. That was literally his thing. I love the idea of it being like a retired military veteran, some guy who, like, been to Afghanistan is the end of this thing, and you're being paid to just work out in the backyard.
That's a good gig.
Ooh, yeah.
Have an outdoor gym out there, have a bunch of veterans.
There's these fucking giant trained German shepherds running around, and you're just making them run drills while you're fucking, like, pumping iron and shit. Like,
and every time they get back there, they, like, rip off their shirt to show their rippling muscles.
Yeah.
And then they have more people watching because they're all so hot and attractive. Yeah.
Okay, let's move away from this topic before Wes explodes.
So,
Too late.
but the Broduses didn't want their house to feel like a bunker. Like, because, like, they're doing this and they're being like, well, we're basically living in a prison of a house if we're doing this. So, Maria says at the end of the day, it came down to what are you willing to risk? We weren't going to put our kids in harm's way. And Derek responded to the occasional alarms at the house, sometimes in the middle of the night, bringing a knife with him just in case. They basically are just petrified. Like, and Bill Woodward says they were so joyous about having their new home, and with days they were just terrified. I'm a stranger, and Maria was crying and shaking in my arms. So she's so broken down about this that she's crying in the guy who's, like, working on her house and being like... the Watcher did seem to get more and more unhinged as time went on. 657 Boulevard is turning on me. It's coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? Maybe the priest did work. It used to be my friend, and now it's my enemy. I am in charge of 657 Boulevard. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again, like I once did. Let the young blood sleep at 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone. First of all, bud, if you didn't send these fucking letters...
They would have just kept coming.
Yeah, if you didn't tell them you were watching them, they would have never fucking known.
So we got some guy over here who's his grandpa and his dad, they were content to just watch. His problem is he reached out.
Yeah.
And that's probably breaking some rule, right? Like, they probably had a rule in place, like, you can watch the house, you don't talk to the people.
Yeah.
And anything bad that happens, it's an accident. You know what? At the end of this story, I bet it was just Derek sending himself letters from the future. He's already paranoid. He's like, there's something in the walls. He's sending it to himself.
I love the idea of future Derek being like, I lost my arm in this house and I want myself to not know. Like, I want myself to not live in this house. But
I like the idea of your future self pulling pranks on your past self because you're that much of an asshole, despite how much it'll change your future.
You know what'll be fucking hilarious?
That's like that meme that I saw that was like, your future self is talking shit about you right now, and I was like, That's fine, I'm ruining that fucking bastard's life. Like, but anyways, the Broduses had sold their original home and had moved in with Maria's parents while continuing to pay the mortgage and property taxes on this house. So they're still paying for this house, but they're living with her parents because they're so terrified to move in. Derek's like, I had to do things like shovel the driveway. Just picture that little indignity. I go at 5 a.m, then come back and do it again at my in-laws. They had a handful of friends. They had told a handful of friends about the letter, and left others. And this left everybody being like, "Why aren't you moving in?" They were wondering if they were getting a divorce. Like people started wondering if they're going to divorce if they didn't know about the letters. So they'd be like, "Why aren't you moving to the house?" Like,
what's going on here?
Yeah. So Derek was like, "I was a depressed wreck." Maria started seeing a therapist. And anytime that she would go see this therapist, the moment he would ask, "How are you?" she would burst into tears. The therapist said that she was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and it wouldn't go away until they got rid of the house. 6 months after the letters arrived, the Broduses decided to sell 657 Boulevard. They initially listed it for more than they paid to reflect the renovations that they had done, but a few worlds are more gossipy than suburban New Jersey real estate. So, of course, everybody knows what's happening in this fucking house. Especially because they went after a family, and that family now knows about it, and that family's been there since the 60s. They probably told a neighbor or something like that. They probably saw cop cars coming and whatever else and being like, "What's going on with Michael?"
Again, it's cheaper than cable to watch your neighbors.
Yes.
Everything's cheaper than cable.
One broker emailed to say
Cable's expensive.
One broker emailed to say that her client loved the house, but they had heard many unsubstantiated rumors flying around, ranging from sexual predators to a stalker. I love that they started with sexual predator. They didn't go stalker to sexual predator. They were just like, if it's sexual predator, I'm okay with this. But if it's a stalker, that doesn't take up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
So they asked if they asked for more information, and so the Broduses sent a partial disclosure mentioning the letters to the interested buyers and told the realtors that they intended to show the full letters to anyone whose offer was accepted. So if you accept the offer and you decide you're going to buy the house, just know there are letters, but we will give you these letters if you have accepted the offer. There were a lot of bids well below asking price, and the Broduses were ready to take such a financial hit, and only wanted to share the letters with likely buyers. Because again, they don't want the letters to be completely public. No one got that far. They even lowered the price. It just kept getting worse. Like, they're losing money on this house. They're not living in there. So they thought about what they had done, but they thought that they would have done... Sorry, Derek and Maria thought about what they would have done had the previous owners told them about the letter from the Watcher. But those people only got one letter and lived there for 23 years. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
Whatever. And the Woodses are actually both retired scientists. So they're logical people, and they're like, this is fucking stupid. And threw it out. So the Broduses... the Woodses, both retired scientists, told the Broduses that they remembered the letter they received was more strange than threatening, and thanked them for taking care of the house. And they say they never had any issues. This never happened before. They never felt watched. They
said the word!
Yeah. So they even rarely locked the doors. So they felt so safe in this house that they'd be like, "Oh, I forgot to lock the door last night." The Broduses felt the name alone was ominous enough to merit mentioning to a new family moving in. And on June 2nd, 2015, a year after buying this, they filed a legal complaint against the Woodses and began to sue. Arguing that the Woodses would have disclosed the letters just as they had if they had found water in the basement. So basically, you should have told us about the fucking letters and we would have not bought this house. Yeah. Which I don't think it would have been true. I would think you all would have sat down and been like, this is fucking weird, but whatever. You lived there for 23 years. This is the only time you ever see the letter.
It requires more than one letter to show up before you go, okay, this is a problem.
Mm-hmm. So The Broduses say that they were hoping to reach quiet settlement. The kids still don't know about the Watcher. And the lawyer just assumed that they would get a small payment from, like, this seems like it was just kind of like we're suffering and we're losing money, so you know what, this is your fault. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. The Watcher has a lot of, like, his story went viral afterwards. A local reporter found out about the complaint and used snippets from the complaint and made that story just blow up. Like, it came out. So news trucks camped outside of the property. A local reporter set up a lawn chair to conduct his own watch. Now they're all the Watchers. Like,
yeah.
What if this was a fucking ploy by the news agencies?
Could do.
A very long con.
Yeah. So the Brodus has got more than 300 media requests and advice from a crisis management consultant referred by one of Derek's colleagues, and decided not to speak publicly to spare their kids more media attention. They vacated Westfield, went to a friend's beach house, but they didn't find any peace. Maria's grandfather passed away of a heart attack, and the friend that they were staying with had a grand mal seizure. So eventually they sat down with the kids and explained the real reason they hadn't moved into the home. The kids had a lot of questions. Who is the Watcher? Where does this person live?
Did you check the walls?
Why is this person angry with us? Honestly, that'd be mine. Like, the 10-year-old, I think he's 10, I'd be like, so he keeps saying the walls.
Can we open the walls?
What's in the walls? I'm sure you could get, like, some sort of benefit of money if you open the walls and there's, like, a skeleton in there.
Even just some closure.
Yeah.
Like, I'd just be tearing my hair out, like, what is in the wall?
So, from a distance, it's actually just like it's speculative, like we're doing currently. The Watcher kept claiming about the walls. And that's the thing that we keep saying, the fucking walls. So, a bunch of Reddit users actually brought it up on Google Maps, and it showed a car parked in front of 657. One user thought that the man was holding a camera in the driver's seat. Others were more like it's pixelated glare. They basically found this guy though, and it was like no, like he didn't do anything. Some people thought the Broduses were wimps for not just moving in. Which
that's the internet.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Well, I would have done it different.
Yeah, and in Westfield, like, I would just fucking live there and have a gun.
I'm American. Red hot blooded, trolly American.
Yeah. So, in Westfield, people were really on edge. Lori Clancy, which I love, who teaches piano lessons in her house behind 657 Boulevard, told me one of her students came into the lesson shortly after the news of the Watcher broke and started to bawl. She was terrified to walk down the boulevard. Westfield Town Council had a meeting after letters became public. The mayor assured the public the Watcher hadn't been heard from in a year. So again, they haven't heard from this person in a year either.
Why not just move into the house?
He's done. Like, I think he's finished. And any letters that you get, like, even these FBI people are telling you, we don't think he'll act on this. Like, we really don't.
Like, keep your security up, move into the house.
You have cameras set up, you have a security system.
And one of the last letters was, the house doesn't like me anymore, blah,
yeah.
blah, blah. Which means that this person is clearly panicking about the house being changed. They don't know the layout anymore properly, they don't know any of, like, all the secrets. Like,
I have a feeling that it goes a little bit more simple than that. It's actually a little more primitive than that. I have a feeling he had a way into the house, and when they did these renovations, something in the renovations made it so that he couldn't get into the house.
Because they were doing some stuff in the basement, and he mentioned the basement by name. Like, just move into the house.
A veteran detective in Westfield, Baron Chambliss, hated all of this national attention on them, and said the Broduses are victims, and I don't think they're getting any of the support they need. Chambliss and his colleagues actually went and took a look at Michael Langford again. And according to his brother, Sandy Langford, Michael had been diagnosed with schizophrenia as a young man. He sometimes spooked newcomers to the neighborhood when he did strange things, like walk through their backyard, peek into windows of homes that were being renovated. But those who knew him told me of the odd things. So they told the person who wrote this of odd things that he did, mostly just his unusual neighborhood. Like, he's just out there looking kind of thing.
Yeah. He's not actively writing or anything like that.
John Schmidt, who originally said that he's a Boo Radley kind of character, he goes out and gets my newspaper for me every morning. So this guy's this guy's probably just trying to make friends and knows that he's a little off and is like, you know what? This guy up the street, he really likes me because I bring his newspaper to him. Like,
and he's what? He's in his 60s, right?
Yeah. And people who had known Michael for decades say that anything was capable of writing these letters. Like, Chambliss looked further into the case. He discovered something really surprising. Investigators had conducted DNA analysis on one of the envelopes and determined that the DNA belonged to a woman. Chambliss decided to focus more closely on Michael's sister, Abby Langford, who worked as a real estate agent.
Interesting.
And it's actually weird because with her firm, there was something where she was actually supposed to be the realtor on this and missed the commission on it because it got brought to another company. Like,
that gives motive.
Fucking...
And you know what? The Watcher never said, I am a man, just my father and my grandfather. We made the jump, but like...
Well, you guys made the jump. I didn't say anything.
So...
Except gave him a very male Southern accent, but that was irrelevant. I just have a very male Southern accent type voice, like I'm speaking right now.
Where's the Southern accent?
You don't hear it? It's very clear and obvious.
Sorry, here in Canada Town, USA, like everything just kind of blends together.
Wow, that's racist.
So, Abby Langford actually worked also at a local bar called Lord and Taylor. So Chambliss managed to get one of the security guards to nab her plastic water bottle during his shift, and they did another DNA sample analysis, but it wasn't a match. So she's not a match for the DNA, but the DNA is female. The prosecutor office gave Derek and Maria some unexpected news. They wouldn't say why or how, but they had ruled out the Langfords as suspects. Probably because none of the DNA evidence is matching up now, and like you can't keep harassing these people. The Broduses were stunned, and they had recently told the prosecutors they planned to do a file. They were going to sue the Langfords, and they wonder if that's why the prosecutor brought up this story. Sandy Langford said, "My family moved to the Boulevard in 1961. We were never caused a problem for anybody. This guy gets all these letters, and all of a sudden people are pointing fingers." Which, fair. If you haven't caused any issues, and the most that's ever happened is that every now and then your brother does get caught, like, being too close to a house. You know, no. Like, you can't just sue people for nothing.
Like, they could have ruined their lives, and on what grounds? Just a suspicion? Like,
yeah.
The court of public opinion is a shitty thing.
So the Broduses reopened their own personal investigation. They're still coy about sharing any information with their neighbors. All their neighbors are still suspects to them. They spent an afternoon walking the block with a picture of the Watcher's handwritten envelope. They hope somebody might recognize the writing from a Christmas card or a letter or something that got given around the neighborhood. The only notable encounter came from an older man who lived behind 67 and said his son joked that the Watcher sounded a bit like him. The neighbors across the street was the CEO of Kroll, a security firm, and the Broduses hired the company to look for handwriting matches. They found nothing. They hired Robert Leonard, who was a forensic linguist and a former member of the band Sha-Na-Na, who didn't find anything noteworthy in the overlap, he just didn't find anything. They're basically just digging where they can, and they're trying to figure out who this person is. And in honesty, they haven't received any more letters.
They haven't received any more letters, and they haven't moved into the house.
Yeah. The Chambliss and the Westfield police also went back to square one. They asked for Andrea Wood's DNA sample and interviewed her 21-year-old son, who was surprised that he suddenly seemed to be a suspect. You went, what They sold you the fucking house above what they wanted. Like, are you suddenly thinking that they're like, well, we didn't make enough money off of that. We really want the house back. Like, what the fuck?
I'm pretty sure they would have just said, like, can we have the house back?
Honestly, it sounds like
they were trying to get rid of it at this point, right?
It sounds like they just went fucking insane.
Or when the court thing, you know what? How about we just trade houses? We'll move back in there. You take our new house. Like, fuck. Like, what the fuck you want? Like, and then to go after their son. Like, so, initial police canvass made it, like, just didn't bring up any new clues. There's no fresh leads because there's no fucking new letters. Like, around the same time the Broses received their first letter, another family in the Boulevard got a similar note from the Watcher, which this is weird that it, like, popping up years later. The parents of that family had lived in their house for years, and the kids were grown, so they threw the letter away just as the Woodses had, because that's what a normal fucking person does. They're just like, whatever, this is weird, we've been living here for years. Like, our kids have already grown up here, and then there's this weird letter. And to me, if I know new people are moving, it's the fucking new people. They're fucking weird. Like,
so in other words, it was just they're just waiting for a reaction, and then like, fuck, I got one.
Yeah.
And then they reeled him in like a big old fish. There's no more to that.
I don't know if I can go.
I don't like.
What's for dinner? The Broduses.
Exactly. Thank you. You get the concept. I'm good. I'm really good fishing.
You quit being banished. So, Chambliss and a partner decided one night to sit in the back of a van parked on the boulevard and watch the house through a pair of binoculars. Around 11 p.m., a car stopped in front of the house long enough for Chambliss to grow suspicious. He says he traced the car to a young woman in a nearby town whose boyfriend lived on the same block as 657. The woman told Chambliss that her boyfriend was into, quote, some really dark video games, end quote. Who isn't?
Yeah.
Including, in Chambliss's memory, one in which he was playing a specific character, the Watcher. As for the female DNA, Chambliss figured the girlfriend or someone else could have helped. The boyfriend was living elsewhere at the time, but Chambliss says that he agreed to come in for an interview on 2 separate occasions, but he didn't show up either time. Chambliss didn't have enough evidence to compel him to appear, so they couldn't just be like, you have to appear.
Couldn't get a warrant for it either.
Yeah, and so he dropped the case and moved on. In all honesty, that's probably your best bet. Some fucking guy who
wants to mess with people.
Yeah.
What game?
No idea. Did it say a video game?
Because I do know a game that has a Watcher in it. I know Slay the Spire has a character that you can play as called the Watcher. Wait, what year is this again?
2014.
14? I think Slay the Spire is out then. Might not have been. But yeah.
So, the Broduses are still stressed and they have fear. Basically, they've become a creepier legend, though. Like, the house is just walk by on Halloween, see if you're brave enough to get into the house. Like, no one lived in the house before the woods. Could recall anything unusual. This is just the same bullshit over and over and over again of it's just them, and they've become super scared about this.
Mm-hmm.
Then people started to suspect that the Broduses were sending the letters themselves. And
I told you, it's Derek from the future.
It says that the Broduses were suffering from buyer's remorse, and they couldn't afford the house. They concocted an elaborate scheme to get out of the sale. Or that Derek was cooking up some kind of insurance fraud, which would actually really make sense because he works for an insurance company. Or they were angling for a movie deal. And the Broduses actually had received several offers, but turned them down. Though recently they did have a movie that got released called The Watchers. But they kept giving cease and desist letters. Like, the Broduses kept being like cease and desist letters. So they argue, but they continued with it, and the couple in the movie are biracial, and the letters were signed The Raven. So, but Netflix has picked up the rights to this story recently. So locals found it noteworthy.
Has it come out?
Not yet. So locals found it noteworthy that over the course of a decade, the Broadduses upgraded from a $315,000 house to a $770,000 house to a $1.3 million house and refinanced all their mortgages. So this is very possible that it was just too expensive for him. And he just doesn't want his wife to know. Like...
But it was woman DNA.
Yeah. So they decide that they're going to go forward with this, and the police decide to test Maria's DNA, and it didn't match. None of the theories made much sense. Actually, in all honesty, I would test the kids. One of yours is a daughter. Test that DNA.
You get one of your kids to...
With the envelope. I used to love doing that for my parents when I was a kid.
That's true. I remember doing that too.
So, none of the theories made any sense. The Broadduses had answered every question. How does somebody... Derek exactly says this. How does someone go from a $300,000 house to a $1.3 million house in 10 years? It's America. I'm a fucking CEO. I'm like a vice president. I'm a fucking executive. Like... They weren't speaking publicly. Rumors persisted. The Boulevard residents wrote a letter to the editor arguing that it's an elaborate scheme underway to defraud the Woods family for millions of dollars, which also that could be. They're trying to figure out a way to sue these poor people. So Broadduses didn't know any of their neighbors and didn't know that it was going to get out. Maria's family had been part of the community for a very long time, so it was shocking for them to find themselves suddenly being accused of, well, their daughter's a con artist. Derek seemed to prefer the conspiracy theory that the whole town was in on this. So...
Very hot fuzz plot line.
Yeah, so anyways, they end up like renting out the property to a few places, like to a few people. But it just doesn't work out. The people are living there, and like they bought this house to live in it themselves. And the renters are damaging things and whatever else. Like, it's not the best. So they just keep living with this house, trying to sell it. And they just can't seem to get a sense of security to move into this house. And it's weird because even if they're moving people in, you would think the Watcher would then start writing letters about those people living in that house.
Yeah.
But he doesn't surface again. So, again, like, they're still trying to figure out what to do with it, and the lawsuit is still pending with the Woods, and it's not happening. The judge actually dismisses the lawsuit. The Woods, through their attorney, declined for comment on that story, so they, again, don't win that. Derek looked into renting the house to the Department of Veteran Affairs, who's a company that runs halfway houses. So he's literally just like, I need to make money back. So first he's trying to rent it to tenants, then he's trying to rent it to fucking Department of Veterans to see if he can make it like into a veterans home. Like, in the spring of 2016, they put 657 back on the market, hoping to garner more interest. The Broadduses had a well-attended open house. Probably because people wanted to come see the house.
Yeah.
Look at this is the house.
Again, it began to look a legend, right? Like...
Yeah. And they even... they used this open house to compare... to research the people who signed in and compare their handwriting to the Watcher. My God, people. Like...
It's one of those things where it became more about this mystery than actually like keeping themselves safe.
Yeah.
Oh, they absolutely became way obsessive about it. Like,
so each time that they had a potential buyer who expressed interest, the Broadduses' lawyer would read the letters, and then that buyer would back out. Derek makes a statement of some cocky guy from Staten Island was like, fuck it, I'm going to get the house at a discount. And then he read the letters and we never heard from him again. So, feeling as if they were out of options, their real estate lawyer proposed this idea, sell the house to a developer who could tear it down and split the property into 2 sellable homes. They thought they could get $1 million for the lot. Subdivisions like this have become common in Westfield, and there was much to the chagrin of many locals. And 657 was one of the neighborhood's largest lot. So dividing it up would actually so dividing it would require the Westfield Planning Board grant an exception and make these into smaller lots because again, this is trying to maintain a historic town, and the town doesn't like change.
Right.
So, it was mandated. So to split the lot, it had to be mandated at 70 feet, but each of the lots would be 67.4 or 67.6 feet wide. So they're just under the mandate.
Ugh.
So the proposal was publicly announced, and the Westfield Facebook group lit up. Some expressed sympathy for the Broadduses, and others pointed out that real estate was always a gamble. Another faction was convinced that this was the culmination of a long con. Like, they just want to do this so they can get the money out of this. Like,
yeah.
The whole thing is scam artist story. It just seems really disturbing. So a typical Facebook conversation basically went like this. Sounds like this whole Watcher thing was a ploy. And then the next line would be, the owners are good people, not a ploy. And then the last line, okay, I know nothing about them. That's basically how these would always go. Like, I think it's a con. Well, they seem like good people. Well, I guess you know them, so I don't know them. Kristen Kemp, a friend of the Broadduses, tried to defend them on a Facebook forum. And somebody asked, how do we know it's not you writing the letters? The planning board met on January 2017, and it was devoted a 3-hour hearing to the issue. More than 100 residents showed up. Someone lived across the street. So, like, these are people really, really local. After a quick discussion about Wells Fargo branch that wanted to use brighter light bulbs in the town was allowed. So they even met to see if the Wells Fargo branch could use brighter light bulbs. That's how controlled this whole thing is.
God, I'd hate that whole
they
concept.
Grew very, very tense as the Suburban Planning Board met. James Forrest, the Broadduses attorney, explained that the 3-foot exemption was as narrow as the easel he was using as a display map of the neighborhood, and a map that showed several lots in the block that were too small, so they're not within it, so we can keep this within it. It'll still match up with the neighborhood. The neighbors expressed concern, requiring knocking down the trees, that a new home would aesthetically be unpleasing, and they went back to the possible, like, they threatened the halfway house as a possible alternative. So, if you don't do it for us, we're just making a halfway house. Like,
yeah.
And then you're going to have fucking old, drunk veterans sitting in the lawn, and that's not a shot at them, but that's what he's saying. He's basically like, so would you rather that, or would you like some fucking prisoners or some drunk guy that was in a war living on your street? Like, so there's a whole thing about this, and some people are like, this would spell the end of the entire block, which I think is a little out there.
It's not the apocalypse.
Yeah. Our neighborhoods are constantly under attack from turf, lights, parking decks, you name it. If we can't make a stand on the boulevard, where can we?
These people care too much about their homeowners association. They should just smoke a little bit of pot and go sit down.
Abby Langford was at this meeting and stood up and said, spent almost 60 years looking at this magnificent, beautiful house, and I don't want to be looking out at a driveway. You are fucking creepy, lady. Like,
are you Watcher?
No, they did her DNA, right? Like,
oh.
But what about the mom?
I know, that's what I've been thinking. Like, she's 90 years old, so
hey, Mom,
she could have been there.
This.
Fucking, God, the whole town was just trying to remove these people.
So the hearing lasted 4 hours, and there was little discussion of the reason the Broadduses has been driven to tear down the house. They're more just concerned about what it's going to do. Tom Higgins, who lived across the street, towards the end of the hearing, says, has anybody thought about whether or not this lunatic who did this has been apprehended? Higgins pointed out there was no guarantee the Watcher would send letters to the two new houses, and argued the aesthetics would rule the day. So he makes a point, tear down the house, who's to say that this Watcher doesn't be like, well, both your houses were on this property, and I have to watch the property. Like,
or gets more angry, right?
I love this.
You wouldn't want them to escalate.
Higgins said putting up two new houses is going to stick out like an old client of mine in Texas told me. It's going to stick out like dog's balls.
Okay. And I know 'Cause I'm from Texas.
So what do we think the board's going to decide on this?
I feel like... Well, the Broduses can't get a break, so I feel like my first instinct is that they're not going to be granted this.
So, I want you to think, 4 hours ago by it's now 11:30 p.m. The board unanimously rejects the proposal. So
What a
they're all like,
shock.
no, fuck you. A New Jersey judge later denied the Broduses' appeal of the decision, so they took this to another court, and they were like, this is unfair. So Derek and Maria basically have no plan. They're financially bleeding. They have on top of the mortgage and renovations that they paid over $100,000 in property taxes to Westfield. The town denied their request for relief because they're not living in the house, and spent at least that amount of time investigating the Watcher and exploring ways to deal with the home. Not to mention cleaning the gutters, all this kind of stuff. They're still doing the maintenance on the house. They have to keep it up and running because it's part of a suburb, and I'm sure that there's a homeowners association.
Yeah, the homeowners association is probably on their ass all the time about stuff like that.
Yeah, so the Broduses recognized that 657 was a beautiful house on a beautiful street, and it was worth maintaining, and they were surprised that their neighbors didn't see the uniqueness of the situation, and basically, they're very, very, fucked up about this whole thing. They just don't know what to do. They have a priest come in and bless the house again, and they had that priest come to this board meeting. And even that didn't persuade it. So not long after the planning board decision, they got some good news. A family with grown-up children and 2 big dogs agreed to rent 657 Boulevard. The renter said he wasn't worried about the Watcher. He had a clause in the lease that let him get out in case of any letters, so if he got him a letter, too bad. 2 weeks later, Derek went to 657 to deal with some squirrels that had taken up residence in the roof, and the renter handed him an envelope that had just arrived. Violent winds and bitter cold to the vile, despiteful Derek and his wench of a wife, Maria. The letter, 2.5 years after the Watcher, so it's been 2.5 years. It's dated February 13th, and the Broduses gave a deposition with their lawyers against the Woodses. It says, you wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots. Maybe you spoke to me, one of the so-called neighbors who has no idea who the Watcher could be. Or maybe you do know and are too scared to tell anyone. Good move. The letter was less stylish and more wrathful than the others. It had a lot, the writer had been following this story very closely, so he's enjoying this media attention. Or she.
Whoever they are, they're playing with it. Yeah, they're having fun.
Yeah, they had seen the media coverage. I walked by the news trucks when they took over my neighborhood and mocked me. He went through the investigatory efforts of Derek. I watched you as you watched from the dark house in an attempt to find me. Telescopes and binoculars are a wonderful invention. In the attempt to tear down the house, 657 survived your attempt at assault, stood strong with the army of supporters barricading its gates. My soldiers of the Boulevard followed my orders to a T. They carried out their mission and saved the soul of 657 Boulevard with my orders. All hail the Watcher. The renter then mentioned that he was spooked, but agreed to stay if the Broduses installed cameras in the house. So he's taking the cameras down and then put them back up. The letter indicated revenge could come in many forms. Maybe there's a car accident. Maybe a fire. Maybe something as simple as mild illness that never goes away but makes you feel sick day after day after day after day after day. Maybe the mysterious death of a pet. Loved ones suddenly die. Planes and cars and bicycles crash. Bones break. So they're right back to where they are. So I think the town meeting was the first time that this person had ever heard of this whole thing, and then they got pissed off because you almost managed to tear down the house. So, the Broduses continued to press the case. They kept going to law enforcement, but the law enforcement can't do anything. They literally keep being like, there's nothing we can do. They investigated the guy who was sitting in the house behind the Broduses that faced the house. One of their kids had married a man who grew up, in all places, at 657 Boulevard. So, they have a kid, the neighbors behind them, beside them, have a kid that is married to somebody who lived in this house.
Okay.
Like, they're just digging for any sort of connection. So, Derek basically says that he picked up his tax bill. He feels anxious about the house still. The renter's still there at this point. And they no longer live in fear of the Watcher, but they have to keep dealing with the lingering effect because they still have to pay this fucking mortgage. And they have a tenant living in there. So the rent doesn't even cover the mortgage. They move a new tenant in, and that rent doesn't do it. Their kids are occasionally teased at school. There's a lot of these rumors still out there. Their lives are basically in shambles. And nobody ever figures out who's sending these letters. But it was last year that they actually did end up selling the house. They finally managed to sell this house, and then that's when he took this movie deal.
2021?
2020. So, yeah. I did this research beforehand, so, in 2020, they actually...
Oh, okay, so 2020, yeah.
So, essentially, this whole thing is just one big clusterfuck where they've sold the house, and then they take a deal on it, but, to me, it's just odd that they would, that they take a movie deal after selling the house, almost like you were just waiting for it to sell.
What gets me, though, is, it could be not innocent necessarily, but, because clearly he wanted to get some money, some royalties from this movie, but, if my life was in shambles because of all of this, I would absolutely be like, you know what, screw this. It's already out there, we've already gotten media attention, this way we can at least control our part in it, and it makes us back some of the money that we lost and we're hemorrhaging.
Not to mention, if you, after you sold the house, technically the Watcher is no longer affecting you.
Yeah.
And so doing the movie might not put you in harm's way with this Watcher.
Yeah.
And at the very least, it'll give you some closure. It's a chapter of your life. You're closing it now. It's over. It's done. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's make it into a fictional fantasy type thing, and then we'll feel better about it.
So one thing that I do have is that if it was him, I don't think his wife was in on it. I don't think she knew anything about it. And if it is him, what was his original plan? Was it that he starts receiving these letters, and then all of a sudden he lights the place on fire, he lets go of smoke or something? Or
was he going to harm his children?
Was he going to keep moving? So, is it the wife that stopped him from moving everybody in? Was her being well, we're not moving in then?
And if it is him, what an asshole. He gave his wife PTSD from...
Honestly, it does make sense, though, if it was him, because that also implies that, if you're trying to go for insurance or something, that the only thing that makes it dumb is you were trying to sue the Woods. So you thought you could get money from the Woods by giving them one letter ahead of time, and then you get the rest of them.
Yeah, start it off. Start it with them a few months before you purchase the house, and make it escalate.
Because it clearly escalated over the time that they owned the place.
Yeah. And you could have gotten the house for cheaper, because if suddenly these letters are popping up all the time during the bidding war, you would get the house for much cheaper, because they would have to start disclosing we have a stalker that lives somewhere in the neighborhood, and then they would have to disclose it. And then you could sue them, or you could even get the house for cheaper, and then this whole thing happens, and it keeps happening, and then you put out the case there that, we sue them, get the money, and then, I don't know, it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially because it's costing them money that cease and desist letter for that Lifetime movie that they made about the Watcher, and they had to change these things, make it a biracial couple, and rename the person the Raven, but, cease and desist letters cost money. They're putting a lot of attorney time into this, and they're just losing money on these attorneys.
Again, they would have been hemorrhaging money at this point, and they would have been really desperate, and why would he do this? He would have endangered their entire family, their entire, place in the neighborhood. He would have endangered all that stuff. Plus, again, he's losing shitloads of money, and I'm pretty sure that that's not an end goal that most people want, even if they are trying to do an insurance fraud kind of claim, right? Like, they're doing it to get money, not to lose it.
Yeah.
Like, there's the thing about a con is you've put enough steps in it that it's almost guaranteed to work, and a failure doesn't lose you too much, or you're in jail.
And,
you know what I mean? Like,
and you're bringing the FBI in. If I'm trying to pull off a con, and the FBI know, like, these FBI people, they're gonna look for shit.
I'm sure all of his things were gone through. Like, these letters were made with a typewriter, correct?
Yeah.
So they probably went through all of his belongings.
They said it's like an old typewriter, too.
Yeah, so it would stand out, like in a living room or in a tool shed or something like that. It would be hard to hide, because an older typewriter as well, you can't keep it in a place that's too cold, you can't keep it in a place that's too wet or too hot or too anything.
they're also
like
absurdly heavy.
Absurdly heavy. So it's not something that you can like just whip out, type out a letter, and then put back in storage.
And the fact that the Watchers stopped putting letters out there for 2.5 years, but then all of a sudden, when there's a meeting and like a board meeting to tear the house down, suddenly they resurface. Of course, he's going to resurface, because now you're about to destroy what he wants.
Like, you made it even more personal in a way. You know?
So, like, that's just like my thought process. Not that it's like it has to be just somebody unhinged. And honestly, I could actually see that fucking guy who lives on the street and has a girlfriend that, like, lives in another city over or something like that, and, like, he popped by at 11 o'clock. I could see it being him.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I don't know, just for the sake of it. Like...
Absolutely. Like, people who have that kind of morbid fascination with other people do love to just mess with people. Like, they don't care if they ruin someone's life. So... I don't know. There's a lot of aspects of this that just are infuriating to me. Because, like, what was in the walls?
That's another thing. You paid all this money, so you paid massive amounts of money. You put over $100-something thousand in property taxes. You put tons of money into renovating the place. You put money into having to circulate these things, sue these things, but you couldn't take... So... You're paying all this money, so take $100,000, just gut the walls. Just gut them.
Like, because even if there's nothing, like, bad in the walls, there's nothing, like, there's no bones or whatever, like, there's nothing in the walls. What if there are tunnels in the walls? What if, because it's an older house, they have, like, prohibition, like, tunnels or things like that? That could be a possibility, too. So when things were changed in the basement... The fucking entrance point disappeared, so they couldn't access the stuff in the walls. Because that would be a great place to watch things.
Or even more so, if you open the walls and there was literally nothing in them,
gives you some peace of mind.
You've just realized what they've said is bullshit.
Yeah, they have nothing. They don't know what the fuck they're going on about.
You take the power away from them by doing that. And I understand, like, oh, we want to keep as much together as you can. You can still do that. There are ways that you can remove crown moldings and shit like that. There are ways that it's time consuming, yeah, but, like, there are absolutely ways you could open those walls without destroying the foundation. Like, I don't know. Maybe it was just asbestos.
Yeah.
Have you found asbestos in the walls?
Have you found what's in the walls?
It's like asbestos. Oh, I'm so glad you did. I was really worried about you.
I was really worried about the young blood.
Because, they're more, they might get sick faster, right?
Yeah.
Jeez, fucking hell, man.
This is gonna, like, be a burning question in my mind for a couple of weeks now. Like, I'm gonna be like, what the fuck were they talking about? And why did nobody, like, go
Here's
through...
my thing. Somebody else bought that house in 2020. If I buy this house, I'm going to gut those fucking walls. Like, I'm going to cut into those walls and I'll be like, I want to know what's in the fucking walls. You guys were too stupid to do this. I am totally doing this. And I love that I'm like, you guys are too stupid to do this, as though I'm like some sort of... You guys are stupid. They're going to be looking for soldiers.
I actually had a feeling you were going that direction.
encyclopedic knowledge of Family Guy clips.
Yeah,
is, like,
I know.
the best part of the stuff that comes out of your mouth.
That's The Simpsons, American Dad, Cleveland Show.
So it's funny. So apparently we did attempt to record this before,
Yes.
but David wasn't here, and we can't go. We won't go too far into the explanation why it didn't happen. But when Ben goes, yeah, well, I have The Watcher, but you've heard that already.
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I didn't remember any of it, and then like
Physically, you were there.
yeah, about halfway through, I was like, oh, I remember this now.
I remember this story.
So this was like a really nice refresher. I never know these by the title.
Yeah.
The story, I guess once I hear the story, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it, right? But
In all honesty, I love the fact that I would love somebody where he rips open these walls and there is a picture of the alligator just flipping.
crocodile, fucker.
Yeah, sorry, crocodile.
We got Gustave in the walls.
Gustave is going to be the new character as a detective.
Hal Roach is in the ceiling. We've got a plethora of them just
Oh my
skittering
god,
around
they
in
take
there.
fucking the Langfords down and it's going to be the lie detector musician.
Lies.
That was a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was long, but it was a good story. And that's why at the end I was like, this is all repeating. I'm just going to do this. I used an article that actually had the story laid out, and then I just kind of took the information that was there, because when I originally made this, there was like, I was going through and I had this massive script built, and I was cutting it down, and then I randomly found this article that had my entire script in there, and then was like, well, I could just really excise this article. So,
Whoa! Don't tell people our trade secrets.
I know. But yeah.
The lie detector magician would be very upset at you.
Yes, I know.
You know, we need
But I'm
to
telling the truth here.
we need to catch you up on our all our
Mythos.
characters, yeah, and our
So
mythos.
there's lore, okay.
Oh yeah! Oh my
there
god!
totally is.
We place it all on the bookshelf.
Yeah.
Um,
With Mike Tyson.
with Mike Tyson, who's was he's inside the
He's in the
box,
book
right?
Box.
Yeah.
In the book
The book
box.
box.
Yeah, there's the Midnight Barber, played by Danny DeVito.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, I'm so sad. Before we moved, I had a 4 foot tall Danny DeVito cutout. I should have brought it. Should have left it here.
wait, what happened to it?
He lost a hand to my very small dog.
So you just threw it out?
It was more than a hand, but at first it was just a hand. So we decorated him nice, but yeah.
And he's Danny DeVito, it's not much to lose.
Yeah,
You take one little bit out of Danny DeVito, there's
he's
nothing
literally just a ball. Like, oh my god.
I would love when we get a letter from Danny DeVito's lawyers being like, cease and desist.
left.
Like,
Stop calling him a ball. He has legs right here.
You know what's really funny too is, despite the fact that we have a very specific character that we want, like it was a whole movie concept.
yeah.
Phantom
Barber.
Called The Phantom Barber, and it was a comedy film we wanted to write about with starring Danny DeVito, and but like regularly we do make Danny DeVito play a random
I
character in anything.
Well, he's so versatile, right?
Yeah. He can be
You
a
call-
short, angry old man. He also plays short, angry old man in different settings.
Or short, angry old man with a bowler hat.
Or short, angry old man who swears.
Or some of his older ones, short, younger angry man.
No, he's always been an older man.
Has he?
Oh my god, he
Came out wrinkled?
he never not looks like the oldest person in the room. I remember watching Be Cool, or not Be Cool, What was Get Shorty? That's the first one. And he's like, you look at him and he's like, he still looks like an old.
Look at him as the penguin. And
yeah.
If you wanted to do some community service, you should just go down to an old folks' home. Then he will be the oldest person in the room, and they'll all feel great, revitalized.
All right.
And then Morgan Freeman shows up, and everybody feels bad already. All right. Let's wrap this up. This isn't an overflow. This is a main episode. So that's our show. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at BAKSChar. Or you can follow me on Twitter at I'm Glad You Asked _. You can follow us on Facebook at Chaos Jar Podcast. And that is also the name of our YouTube channel. You can also, be a patron. Throw us a couple bucks at patreon.com/chaosjar. And that's it. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, it's all in the show notes and shit. Yeah, that's our show. Okay, good night.